often have you felt restricted to spiritual practices that often seem outdated and of little relevance in today's world? Are you discouraged to express your own creative talents and develop spiritual practices that are uniquely you? The Liturgical Rebels podcast is for people like you who want to reimagine and reconstruct their faith and spiritual practices. It's for those who want to reshape belief and journey closer to God's wholeness with peace, justice, and flourishing, not just for themselves, but for the earth and all its inhabitants. In today's episode of Liturgical Rebels, I will be in conversation with James Amadon, the Executive Director of Circlewood. I'm excited to be joined by my husband, Tom Sine, who will co-host this session discussing the history of the land on Camano Island, which he purchased in 1989 as part of Mustard Seed Associates. Our desire was to develop a place of sustainable ecological learning with a Celtic flavour. This vision has now become Circlewood Village under James Amadon's leadership. James' desire to integrate faith and ecology led him to assume the leadership of Circlewood in 2017. As executive director, James guides the mission to accelerate the greening of faith through creative and global media, including the Earth Keepers podcast and the Ecological Disciple online journal. Immersive education like the Journey of Ecological Discipleship Leadership Cohort and the development of Circlewood Village, a sustainable learning centre on Camano Island. James is ordained in the Covenant Church, has a BA from Gordon College, an MDiv from North Park Theological Seminary, and a DMin from Duke Divinity School, where he focused his work on developing a framework for ecological Christian leadership. James was raised in the Great North Woods of New Hampshire, but has called the Pacific Northwest home since 2007. James, it's a delight to be able to chat with you today. And it's also a delight to have my husband, Tom, with us in this conversation, which focuses on the ministry of Mustard Seed Associates, which we began and which, of course, you have continued to grow now as Circlewood. So welcome, James, and welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Glad to be with you guys.
Yeah, likewise. Really a pleasure to be with you.
I was thinking, getting ready for this, James, just how much we relish your friendship and the shared passion that we have for the land on Camano and the kind of ministry that you're doing there. And of course, this centers around the land that Tom purchased over 30 years ago. So looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that. But I understand you didn't grow up in the Pacific Northwest. You grew up in the Great North Woods of New Hampshire.
That's right.
And you moved to the Pacific Northwest in 2007. So tell us a little bit of the journey that brought you to Camano Island.
Yeah, thank you for that, Christine. And thank you for Tom for having the foresight and vision to purchase this 40 acres of land that actually I'm in right now and recording from. If you were able to see the video, you'd see a little bit of the 40-acre forest that our new ecological learning center sits in. And I'm just so grateful for that and looking forward to hearing that story a little bit more later on. In terms of how I arrived here, it's been a journey of both geographical, theological, and vocational, I would say. My life has slowly moved west until my family settled out in the Pacific Northwest about 15 years ago. And what brought me here mostly was pastoral ministry. So I went to seminary at North Park in Chicago and was called out to a church in Oregon and then one in Bellevue. So that's what brought me out to the Pacific Northwest. as I was going through that journey, I was asking a lot of questions about what it meant to be a follower of Jesus in a time of ecological crisis. I was asking about why the church didn't seem to be addressing that very much. And I was asking, what does the gospel look like when the world is on fire through climate change and other things like that? I found a group of people, theologians, activists, visionaries like yourselves, who were asking similar questions. And in my own vocational journey, came to a point where I felt I needed to make a change and step out of pastoral ministry to pursue these questions and find answers with people. And it was at that moment where Mustard Seed Associates was looking for someone to take over the wonderful vision that you had started out here on Camano. And I just knew it was time for me to take a leap. So, with your blessing and encouragement, and of course, the board's call, I did that and have been leading what is now Circlewood since 2017. And it's been a fantastic, wonderful, difficult, rewarding ride that I'm so grateful to have had the chance to step into.
Yes, we understand that, and we'll get a bit more into that in a moment. But your doctorate focused on a new paradigm of pastoral leadership through the integration of ecology, agrarianism, eco-theology, and adaptive leadership. In other words, this was the essence, really, of, I think, what spurred the vision that you had for this. So tell us a bit more about that and why you think we need this new kind of a paradigm for leadership within the church.
Yeah, I was so fortunate and grateful to have the opportunity to do studies at Duke Divinity School focused on this. And it was, one, the recognition that there wasn't really much out there to help pastors in particular who were asking the same questions I was asking. How do you move a congregation in this direction? How do you start on a journey where there isn't a clear ending, where it's about discovery, about forming new ways of ministry and doing church together? I was finding there was a lot of different strands of this, and I tried to pull it all together through the lenses, as you said, of ecology, agrarian thinking, eco-theology, and adaptive leadership to try to say, hey, if you're on this journey, this what we now call the journey of ecological discipleship, if you're exploring these new themes, these new ways of being in the world, new ways of following Jesus, as we say, from the ground up, how do you bring along your people? So that was what sparked that study. And really, it's been what we've been exploring in large part through the work of Circlewood. And just in a few weeks, we're going to gather some ministry leaders here on site to explore that in depth. We're doing a 5-day learning retreat called the Journey of Ecological Discipleship for Leaders. So I'm finding that there are others like me who are sort of trying to move in these new directions and help bring people along.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, as you've already mentioned, we met in 2017 and we were amazed. I mean, it was one of those God moments.
Mm-hmm.
You feel that God has put us together, as well as with Forrest, who introduced us, Forrest Ensley, who's also very much a part of Circlewood. And it was amazing that we had such similar visions in many ways for Camino. But Camano, not Camino. We've got to distinguish between those two because people often think Camino, but it's actually Camano.
Yeah.
But I want Tom to give us a bit of the history of the land and what he purchased the land in not 1898, 1989. It's not quite that long ago. And, things progressed slowly, but I want him to share some of that history.
Well, I still remember that remarkable spring day when I purchased 40 lovely acres on Camano Island in 1989. After my first trip to the land and on Camano Island, in the north of Seattle, 1989, I took a trip to Iona, Scotland. And in 1982, I became particularly inspired by Celtic Christian tradition that I witnessed in Iona, Scotland. It reflected for me a view of faith that seemed to impact it, reflected faith that I had not encountered before. That motivated me to read much more about Celtic Christianity. And in that season of my life, it became an essential element of my Christian faith to understand how that viewpoint could shape more of our lives. In 1992, I had the very good fortune of meeting a lovely woman who actually was willing to consider becoming my wife.
It's me.
And
Of course.
God bless her, she's still on board. And so I'm grateful for that. She was even willing to join me in one of my trips to Scotland.
And we actually went there on our honeymoon. So,
That's so
this
lovely.
was right at the beginning. It was obvious this was a passion. And I think shortly after that, we came to visit the land on Camano Island.
And I discovered that she too had developed a keen interest in Celtic spirituality. And Christine and I started constructing a retreat site that we enjoyed sharing with our good friends. We wanted to create a site on the property to enable our collaborators to explore a broad range of ways to creatively enable the people of faith to prepare for these new opportunities and challenges that we're likely to encounter in our troubled tomorrows.
Well, and one thing that we did was that every year in August, we would hold a retreat, an open air retreat. Some of us stayed in tents. Some people just came in for the day. And very much this was what kept the vision alive during those first 25 years.
Yes, and I can remember actually being out here one of my first few times, and I kept discovering prayer trail signs from
Yes.
those retreats that were like a welcome blessing to me.
Oh yeah, we set up several prayer trails, and it wasn't just a blessing to us at the retreats, but we heard from some of the neighbors that they would enjoy walking the prayer
Yes,
trails that we'd
yes.
set up as well, didn't they, love?
Yes, they did. And for me, it was to keep the vision alive. We actually started holding these annual retreats using Celtic music and liturgies and having a range of good friends join us. And it kept growing, and it kept causing people to become interested. And we began to build a response that reflected our views and our hopes in 2012.
Well, and that's the first building. I look at that building behind you there, James, and I
Yes.
think, wow, it's hard to believe that that is the same building, now completed, that
Yes.
we began in 2012.
Yeah. Awesome.
And slowly then, by 2015, we had a unhappy experience where the building was vandalized, windows were destroyed, which knocked the stuffing out of us for a while. And then we realized we needed some younger people to join us. And we were delighted to meet James Amadon in 2017, and thank God for his leadership and that of his team that is advancing the completion of this project.
It is. It's really, really wonderful. But James, what about our dreams for the land really resonated with you and drew you to say yes when we asked you to consider when we were stepping down from Mustard Seed Associates and asked you to consider coming into leadership?
Yeah, there was so much about what you had dreamed and visioned and started here that got me on board in a hurry. I think, among others, imagining or recognizing the need that we need new spaces, new places for people to come to and have their minds, their hearts, their souls open to something new. There was something about what you were thinking about here, how you'd been approaching the land, what you had designed, that just felt to me like, that's a place that can really unlock something in people and in groups. To see something new and different that's integrated with its habitat, that speaks to wholeness and innovation, but also in a very simple and welcoming way that could spark people's imaginations so they could leave here going, I kind of see now what I might do in my own place. I kind of have a different vision for what faith and life and community looks like. That captivated me. And honestly, the architectural vision that you'd put together with the sort of concept of circular buildings embedded in the forest just got my imagination flowing. And one story I love to tell is that you and the board had given me permission that if I had thought we needed to do this somewhere else, if I had come to the conclusion that we probably need to sell this particular property or hand it over to a different organization and maybe purchase something that had infrastructure already set up or something like that. You'd given me your blessing to do that. But I remember saying, okay, I will take that seriously. And I sat with that question for the first few months after I said yes to the role. And I was sitting out here a little bit up the hill towards the ridge, looking down over the center circle, and just seeing that center circular area reminded me like, no, this is why you said yes. You said yes because this was a chance to literally do something from the ground up, to unlock people's imaginations, to build in a different way, to welcome people to that, as I said before, that creative space that you can't always find in places. And I remember saying, I don't know if I can pull this off. I don't know how far we'll get, but I think this is what God has invited me to take on. And this is why I said yes. So thank you for dreaming so big and bold.
We couldn't be more grateful
Yes.
for your leadership and your creativity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and one thing that delights me is that David Vandervoort, the architect, who has literally walked with us since the very beginning of this, I think he came to every single Celtic retreat that
Yes,
we
he
did.
did.
So he wasn't just an architect, he was a friend, and he was very much a part of the in some ways the fabric of the land as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm so delighted that he is still walking with you in
Yeah.
the continued development of this property as well.
Yeah, when people come out here, they will see his vision reflected in this first learning center for sure.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Well, and where is the development at now? And what do you need to see happen to make it possible for this dream to be fully realized? Because I know in many ways it's still, in spite of the number of years, in its infancy.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're trying to model in the way that we're going about this is an ecological approach to design, development, community building. And by that, I mean there needs to be an element of boldness, of vision, of saying this is where we want to go. And then it needs to be wrapped around with a deep sense of we are going to have to adapt to the relationships that we have, whether that's with the forest, what is actually going to fit here? What is going to work? And can we be flexible enough to adjust our vision and our plans so that it fits this community that we're in? In addition to that, because the vision is so different, as you know, it takes people some time to wrap their hearts and minds around it.
Yes.
I can understand that.
Yeah, it's not like we're saying, okay, come with us, we're doing A, and it's going to immediately lead to B. and then you'll be able to see it. What we're trying to do is change people's consciousness and change the culture of churches, of communities. And that's a deep work that takes some time for people to kind of understand. But what I found is that when people do get it, they're all in. And so we're sort of slowly gathering that support community of people who are all in, who can bring their time, their talent, their resources to this project. And honestly, the other part of it is, as I do this, I get a bit more experienced with it, because developing from scratch is really quite, I've never done that before. So
We,
you
and that's
guys know
why
it's difficult.
that's why we couldn't be more grateful than for the kind of creative leadership you're providing.
Yeah, yeah, it's wonderful. And so one building finished now.
Yes.
What are you hoping that the Circlewood village will look like?
Yeah, so the vision is for the capacity to have up to 40 people stay overnight in kind of forest cabins. In the summer, there's obviously tenting, camping kind of opportunities. And that as we build out, the center of the village will actually be around that cleared center circle. And it'll involve, building for staff and some classrooms, a dining center, outdoor learning centers. And then, we've got 40 acres of trails, some of which are built now, and some of which we're going to be constructing in the near future. So, kind of that small retreat and learning center feel. We're calling it a village because we imagine there'll be permanent staff living on site, and the goal is when people come, they're sort of part of the community for however long that they're here, working with us, learning alongside us. That's sort of straight in line with the vision that you had, kind of a place, a hub for this kind of work.
Yeah, we couldn't be more supportive of what you've just described.
Well, and you've already got programs underway. Can you tell us about those too?
Yeah. Yeah. As I mentioned before, and as you well know, development work takes a lot of time.
Yes, a lot of time, a lot of
Yeah.
energy, and a lot of money.
Yeah, it's the trifecta right there.
Yes.
Yeah. In addition to getting permissions, from the county that we sit in for doing something that's really outside of the box. But as we've been doing that, we've developed some media work. So we're in our 5th season of the Earthkeepers podcast that my colleague and our dear friend Forrest Inslee hosts.
Thank
And that,
God.
yeah, he's doing a wonderful job. What I just say is he has conversations with people doing creative earthkeeping work from around the globe. And I learn something every time.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. He's excellent, and I enjoy the opportunity occasionally to join him on one of those episodes, and it's wonderful. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then our other media piece is called the Ecological Disciple. It's an online journal where we publish original writing about once a week. We write about art and how that can open our minds and hearts to a different understanding of creation. I tend to write from a more biblical, theological, practical ministry perspective. And then we have people writing first-person narratives about their own work of earthkeeping.
It's excellent. It
thank
really
you.
is an excellent publication, and I always enjoy it when it appears in my inbox. And, there aren't many things I make sure I read, but that's one of the ones that I love to read.
Well, thank you.
And it's not just because we started the ministry, it's because they're just so good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, that a lot goes into good writing. Yeah, so now that we have a site to bring people to, our vision for Circlewood Village is just a slight adaptation of Circlewood's mission, which is to accelerate the greening of faith. Here on site, the vision is to accelerate the greening of humanity, meaning that as people of faith, we want to be part of the wider conversation as well. We want to serve not just the church and not just individuals who are looking for some guidance in this way. We want to serve the common good. So on the faith-based side, we're developing curriculum around what we're calling the journey of ecological discipleship. So that's a way of saying, if you want to go on this journey, or if you are on the journey, here's what we've learned about it, the different terrain and stages, the different guides that can help you as you go through this process, because it's much more than just learning how to be a little bit more sustainable in your lifestyle or introduce some creation care practices into your church, things like that, as important as they are. What we're after is a new whole way of discipleship. That means, what does it mean to follow Jesus in an interconnected and interdependent world?
Mm.
And then in addition to that, layering on a leadership component for those who are on that journey and want to bring others along. So that's kind of the focus of our faith-based educational work. And then in terms of serving the common good, we're just looking for ways to be part of the wider environmental movement, ways to be good neighbors here on Camano. So one example is we've started talking to the local school district and the local land trust about where are the gaps in outdoor education for public school students. And is now that we have an operational site in this beautiful forest, how can we help local students in particular connect more deeply to the place where they're growing up, to understand it, to love it, and to learn what it means to care for it? So that's kind of our two areas of educational work that we're focused on now and starting to build out.
That's wonderful. And sorry.
Yeah, I just want to add, one of the things that motivated me to buy the land was the first Earth Day. The first
Right.
Earth Day was a life-changing experience for me, and I realized that we were moving in rapidly into a changing world as we go into the 80s and 90s. And frankly, many of people of faith are not even giving consideration to the challenges and opportunities that we're going to face in these next 10 to 20 years.
And unfortunately, it hasn't changed a great deal. In fact, at the moment, I think we're all feeling that maybe we're taking some steps backward rather than some steps forward. And I think that makes the work that you're doing even more important. And the fact that you've developed partnerships with
Yes,
not just with Christian
Yes.
organizations, but with non-Christian
absolutely.
organizations. Can you tell us a bit about some of those partnerships that you've developed?
Yeah, would love to. So, I mean, if you think about what it means to be embedded in a particular place, to be part of its ecosystem and its community, that's where we start. So, in terms of being here on Camano Island, we say, who are our neighbors? Our literal neighbors that share this road. We've become friends with them, and some of them have actually become supporters of what we're doing, and that's been
That's
wonderful.
good news.
Yeah, really good news. And then if you kind of go out a little bit to our region, we're discovering that people, whether they're people of faith or not, are looking for places of transformation.
Mm.
So, for instance, this coming August, we're going to host the local school district's administrative retreat. You know,
Wonderful.
Oh, that's
and
great.
and that just came from they looking for a place that's a bit more creative than a school district building where they could meet and be out in their community.
That's
So
great.
just to say, yeah, we're about that. Yeah, we'd love to support you in that. One thing that we've been noticing over the last couple of months is that even as, in the news around national and global politics, it seems like we're taking two steps back, maybe
Yeah,
we're getting lots of feedback from particularly young people that they are even more hungry for an alternative vision.
Mm.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
and we're finding and one of the new partnerships we just formed is with the Trinity Education Foundation. They have been traditionally a scholarshiping foundation that wanted to move beyond that to help students think about what it means to be Christian, what it means to be in community, and what it means to care for creation.
Mm.
And and
Wonderful.
and to think about that in terms of a lifetime of vocational work. And they've partnered with us because we've been doing that with young adults now for about 9 months.
Mm.
That's
And
remarkable.
And just to say, there are lots of people out there who, despite the headwinds, want to explore and dedicate their life to something different.
That's what a wonderful hope giving kind of
Yes.
not just vision but kind of environment that you're creating as well. It's just wonderful to see. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our readers before we finish off here?
Probably just to follow up on that note, and you and Tom have been doing this for forever, which is to say, this sort of a vision for deep faith that is asking critical questions about where we live, what's going on, how we can be more faithful in difficult contexts, and imagine alternative futures. That kind of work is more critical now than ever
You're
because there are so many people that are just feel like they're on that knife's edge between hope and despair. And I think
yes.
we need people and communities. We need to honor folks like you who've been calling us to hope for decades and saying a different future is possible.
Mhm.
I absolutely believe that. I thank you for instilling that in so many people, many of whom I continue to meet. And when they find out the connection to you, they're like, oh man, those folks changed my life. Uh, that's, I think, what I would want to leave to those listening to this today is that if you're feeling on that knife edge, don't give up. There's lots of people who are still being drawn to hope, trying new things, and working together.
Wonderful.
God bless you. You're absolutely right.
Thank you, James. It's just very hopeful note to end with. Oh, actually, before we do, what's the best way for people to connect to you?
Yeah. We've got a couple of websites. Our main one is circlewood.online, and you can find out all about Circlewood on that. And then if you want to just head to the podcast, it's earthkeepers.online. And if you want to check out the journal, it's ecodisciple.com. Any of those, people can get connected. And we love when people reach out. So love to
They
hear from
will be
people.
on the show notes, but I just wanted you to
And
say it too.
we're looking forward to being out there.
Yeah, we're going to be going out in a couple of days, so we might
Yeah.
have to do another interview in order to get the very latest of what's going on there. 'Cause we do.
And one more thing, your listeners should know that when you come, you're coming to the Sine Center for Ecological Learning.
Thank you.
We're so thrilled to have named this first building after you, and
Well,
just
thank
to
you.
honor that legacy.
Yeah.
Well, and I always feel when we come out there, it's like what the Celts would call a thin space.
Yes.
It's a place where you do feel that the boundaries between earth and heaven are thin, and there's real sense of the divine presence there. It's not just the ecology of the area, but there's a sense of the spirituality of the place as well, and very, very special from that
Yeah.
perspective.
I'm not nearly as excited by including the last name, but I'm more excited by the leadership of what you're doing with your team. That's the thing that really stirs my heart.
It's wonderful. Thank you, James.
Well, thank you. It's been great to talk with you today.
In today's episode of Liturgical Rebels, my husband Tom Sine and I were in conversation with James Amadon, Executive Director of Circlewood. We discussed the evolution of Circlewood, an ecological ministry based on Camano Island, and the journey that led James to take on leadership of the ministry, which grew out of Mustard Seed Associates and the dream that Tom and I had for the land we owned on the island. We explored the integration of ecology and faith, the history of the land, and the vision for future development, including educational programs and community partnerships. The dialogue emphasized the importance of hope and the need for new paradigms in pastoral leadership to address ecological challenges. In the next episode of Liturgical Rebels, I will be in conversation with Victoria Laws, a wild church pastor, an eco-spiritual director, and co-founder of several transformational focused organizations focused on the integration of nature and spirituality. Victoria is also co-founder and director of Seminary of the Wild, which is focused on a deep dive year-long Eco Ministries certificate program for all those who feel called by earth and spirit to restore the great conversation. She is author of 2 books, Church of the Wild, How Nature Invites Us into the Sacred, and Field Guide to Church of the Wild. Her third book, Wild Spirituality, is coming in fall 2026. I am Christine Sine, the author of Celtic Advent, Following an Unfamiliar Path, and of The Gift of Wonder. My other books include Digging Deeper, The Art of Contemplative Gardening, and To Garden with God. I also write regularly on Substack. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the podcast. Please also share it with your friends or join me on Substack, Instagram, or Facebook.